There's a bird at your feeder right now, and in the next few seconds it's going to make a decision you've watched happen 100 times without ever once recognizing what it was. The rain shifts from light to heavy, and the bird doesn't hunch down, doesn't just tolerate it the way you would standing out there. It stops mid-bite, lifts off the perch, and flies. Not scattering, not panicking, moving in one clean line toward a spot it has clearly picked before this moment ever happened. I'm not going to tell you where it's going, not yet, because that flight path, decided in under a second, is the answer to something almost nobody who feeds backyard birds has ever thought to ask. You've watched this exact scene before. A bird abandoning the feeder the instant the sky turns serious, vanishing into the same patch of green it always vanishes into, and called it nothing. Shelter-seeking, weather. You looked away before the real story even started. That flight is a decision, built on knowledge you don't have yet. Stay with me, because by the time this ends, you'll watch that same bird leave that same feeder and already know exactly where it's headed, and why. Here's your feeder in the rain, watching the truth of it happen right in front of you. Most people assume the birds thin out, that wet feathers and cold air send them looking for shelter, and leave your feeder quiet. Watch closely, and you'll see the opposite. The regulars don't disappear, they show up more, and more often, cycling back to the same perch again and again, in a way that looks almost frantic if you don't understand why. It isn't panic, it's math. A wet bird loses heat faster than a dry one, and every degree lost has to be earned back in calories. Rain doesn't just soak feathers, it raises the price of staying alive by the hour. So the feeder stops being a convenience and becomes something closer to a lifeline, and the birds treat it that way, arriving with an urgency that has nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with survival math running in the background of every visit. Here's the part most people never think to ask. What happens if your feeder goes quiet instead? If the visits drop off the moment the sky opens up, that's not bad luck. That's your yard, telling you something you weren't listening for yet. Now drop your eyes from the feeder to the ground beneath it, because the second clue is waiting there. Rain does something to soil that changes everything about who shows up to work it. The earth softens, and everything that's been hiding a few inches down, worms, beetles, the small crawling life that stays buried in dry weather, gets pushed closer to the surface. Robins know this instantly. Watch one hunting wet grass and you'll see a bird operating with a precision it never shows on a dry lawn. Moving with purpose, pausing, striking, covering ground like it's reading a map only it can see. That urgency isn't random. It's efficiency, tuned to a window that won't stay open long. And something else happens down there too. The crowd thins. All the casual visitors who peck at fallen seed on a dry day, competing, crowding, creating chaos you can barely track. Most of them clear out in the rain. What's left are the birds that actually belong on that ground, the ones with real business there. Sparrows are the clearest example. Instead of the scattered, competitive scramble you see on a sunny afternoon, they work the wet ground in careful, deliberate lines, covering territory like they know exactly what they're doing. Because they do. Now we get to the part happening underneath all of it, the part you can't see but can absolutely watch play out. Rain isn't just wet, it's loud, in a way that matters enormously to a bird. Every drop hitting a leaf, every rivulet running off the roofline, every gust pushing water through branches, it all adds up to a wall of ambient noise that swallows the quiet sounds birds have spent their whole lives listening for. The soft rustle of something moving through the hedge, the distant half-second call that means a hawk is somewhere overhead. On a dry day, those sounds carry. In rain, they vanish into static, and a bird's confidence in its own hearing drops with them. Watch what happens next. The same bird that will perch 6 feet from cover on a clear morning, calm and unbothered, will crowd in tight against that same shrub the moment rain starts falling. Not because the rain itself is dangerous, but because it can no longer hear as far as it needs to. The margin it's used to working with gets smaller, and its body knows it before its brain does. Same bird, same feeder, same shrub. A completely different distance from safety. Sound isn't the only sense taking a hit. Look up on a clear day, and a hawk is unmistakable. A dark shape, cutting a hard line against open blue, easy to spot from 100 yards out. Take that same sky and fill it with rain and flat gray light, and the whole picture changes. Edges blur. Movement scatters into 1,000 smaller movements. A predator that would stand out instantly on a sunny afternoon can slip through that visual noise almost unnoticed, and birds seem to know it. Watch a feeder closely during a rain event and you'll catch something subtle. Heads tilting up more often, holding that upward glance a beat longer before dropping back to the seed. It isn't nervous. It isn't frantic. There's no alarm in it, no sudden bolt for cover. It's quieter than that. A steady, recalibrated habit, like someone checking their mirrors a little more often in fog. The bird hasn't gotten more afraid. It's gotten more precise, spending a little extra attention on the one channel that's gone unreliable, while everything else about its behavior stays exactly as calm and functional as always. That's not fear. That's a system adjusting itself in real time. Here's the twist, hiding in plain sight the whole time. On a clear day, your feeder isn't just a place birds eat, it's a stage. Watch long enough and you'll see the posturing, the chase-offs, the puffed-up displays. One bird holding a perch just to keep another one away from it. That's not survival behavior. That's politics, and it costs energy. Birds spend real calories defending status they don't strictly need to defend, because on a clear day, they can afford to. The margin is wide enough to burn some of it on ego. Rain changes the math entirely. Suddenly, that same display costs more than it's worth. The energy it takes to chase off a rival is energy better spent watching the sky or staying warm, and the payoff for winning that fight shrinks to almost nothing. So something remarkable happens. Birds that spent yesterday shoving each other off the perch are today eating 6 inches apart, ignoring each other entirely, because neither one can justify the cost of caring anymore. This is the moment birds stop pretending, not because they've changed who they are, because the rain has made pretending too expensive to keep doing. Once you know that performance has a price, your feeder starts reading differently. Distance stops being neutral information and becomes something closer to a confession. Watch 2 birds that keep their space even now, even in the rain, when maintaining that distance is costing them something they can't really afford. That's not politics anymore. There's nothing left to perform for, no audience, no status to protect, and they're still choosing to stay apart. That's real. That's 2 birds telling you, honestly, that they don't particularly want to be near each other, and no amount of removed pressure changes it. Then there's the opposite case, and it's just as telling. 2 birds that spent yesterday snapping and posturing over 6 inches of perch space, today tucked in close, feeding shoulder to shoulder like the conflict never existed. That gap you saw yesterday wasn't dislike. It was overhead, a cost of doing business in front of an audience that mattered yesterday and doesn't today. You've been handed the key without realizing it. Every distance at your feeder from now on is either real incompatibility or rented space, and rain is the only weather that tells you which one you're looking at. Now we head into the shrub itself, because that's where every thread we've pulled so far finally ties together. Watch a bird choose where to shelter in real rain, and you'll notice it isn't random. It doesn't just duck into the nearest green blur. It moves to a specific branch, at a specific height, angled a specific way, a spot tested and retested until it earns permanent trust. What makes a spot pass that test isn't beauty, it's function. Does it actually block the water, not just look like it does? Can the bird still see anything approaching while it's tucked inside? Is there more than one way out if something goes wrong? A shrub that fails any of those quietly gets abandoned, visit after visit, until no bird bothers with it anymore, even though it looks just as green and full as the one 3 feet away that stays busy every single time it rains. That difference is invisible to us and completely obvious to them. And this is exactly where our story started. A single bird, leaving the feeder, heading somewhere with total confidence the moment the rain turned serious. We're about to find out exactly where it went and why that spot, out of every option in the yard, was the only one it ever really trusted. So let's go back to the beginning, to that single bird lifting off the feeder the moment the rain turned serious, and finally answer the question we opened with. It didn't wander. It didn't panic. It flew a route it had clearly flown before, straight to one specific spot inside the shrub it had already tested, already trusted, already proven to itself over dozens of quieter visits you never noticed. No hesitation, no second-guessing, just a bird executing a decision it had made long before this particular storm ever started. That spot is the real center of your yard. Not the feeder you filled, not the bath you cleaned, not the flowers you planted because they looked good from the kitchen window. Those are satellites. Nice additions orbiting around the one location that actually matters when things get difficult. The feeder feeds, the bath cleans. But that shrub, that exact branch at that exact height, is the place your yard has to get right if it wants to hold on to its birds at all. You can have every other piece of a backyard working perfectly and still lose them the moment the sky opens, if that one spot was never built. Rain didn't create the answer, it just finally showed it to you. So here's what you actually know now, that you didn't before the rain started falling differently in your mind. A yard that gets busier when it rains, more birds at the feeder, more activity on the ground, confident traffic heading straight for a trusted shrub, is a yard that solved the real problem. Not just food, safety, shelter, the whole equation. A yard that goes quiet and empty the moment the sky opens only ever solved one small piece of it, and the birds are telling you that, clearly, every time they leave. None of this was ever birds struggling through bad weather. That was always our assumption, not theirs. What you watched, if you watched closely, was a different program entirely. Precise, practiced, built over dozens of quiet rehearsals you never noticed until today. Rain doesn't break that program. It reveals it. So here's the case file, still open. Go watch your own yard the next time it rains. Find your feeder chapter, your ground chapter, your one trusted shrub. Then tell me what you found. Send me your yard's answer in the comments, and subscribe, because this is only the first case we've solved together.